All right, welcome everyone. It looks like we have a quorum. So welcome to the April 1st, 2022 meeting of the Denver Citizen Oversight Board. I will be shepherding us today as Julia could not be here due to some pre-planned events. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we have an action-packed meeting today with a big agenda. We will have a few announcements to just catch everybody up on board updates. We have Executive Director of Public Safety, Armando Saldate, here with some pre-planned questions and some additional questions that we might have from community. And then the Office of Independent Monitor is going to give us some highlights from the report. And so, yeah, very busy day, and I'll try to get us going on all of this. So for a bit of board business, just needing to approve the minutes for the last meeting. If everybody had a chance to look at those.
So moved.
Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes for the last meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not hearing any, so we have unanimous ayes there. Again, for the public, just giving some updates on the monitor hiring and search procedures. Board members Stefan, Julia, and Karen had met over the last few weeks and reviewed proposals for potential recruiters and identified a favorite. So we're working with the recruiter to make some modifications and working with the city in order to get the contract up and running. Once we get that going, Julia is continuing to work in forming the screening committee and making sure we have a representative group of individuals on that committee. As she returned, we will hopefully have some more updates on that process to keep us going in that search. Also, another update is the mayor has appointed Tymisha Watkins to the COB nominating committee. So we had a position open, and they will be fulfilling that position when we go through future searches for individuals to serve on the board. And then lastly, we will be presenting, the COB will be presenting the annual report to the City Council Safety Committee on April 20th between 10:30 and 12. People are willing to tune in and join. And for board members, if anybody is interested in also attending that meeting on April 20th, you are more than welcome to join and let Daniel and Julia know.
What were the times again, April on April 20th?
Not a problem, 10:30 to 12.
Thank you.
Don't have to let them know now, but if there is the opportunity for you to also join and participate in that process, you are more than welcome. And so wanting to go ahead and get started, we want to welcome Armando Saldate here with us once again. Thank you so much for your time. And we're just going to hand it over to you for any report outs, and then also following up on the questions that we sent you prior to the meeting. It might be helpful for those who are tuning in later to recite those questions before you give a response.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, Dr. April Alexander. I appreciate the invitation here to Citizen Oversight Board. I always appreciate the opportunity to address you all and the public. So yes, you all did. I'll get right into your questions and open to any questions, further questions that you all may have. But I know there's quite a bit to cover here, so I will get right in. So you asked that you as the board request that I acknowledge the board's 3 recommendations from your 2021 annual report. And first of all, I got to say that thank you for preparing that report. That was, I think, one of the first I've seen from the Citizen Oversight Board, and it was, I thought, well put together, and I appreciate the opportunity that you gave us all to have our input as well. And I hope the public has a chance to review that, because I think it has good information in it. And you asked me to respond to the recommendations that you all made at the conclusion of the report, which I will do now. And those recommendations are, you recommended that the Department of Safety promptly implement formal operating policies for its Public Integrity Division, which has been without formal guidance since its creation in 2019. Once implemented, the DOS shall regularly review compliance with those policies and continuously improve them as appropriate. And so I will address that one first and then go subsequent to the other ones. So that one is true. That is something that since 2019, I think a lot on the board are familiar with the process and how PID was created under two previous directors ago, Troy Riggs. There was an executive advisory board, which included participants from the Office of Independent Monitor, the public, community, employee representation, representatives from the Department of Safety. I was on that board, and as well as former U.S. Attorney Bob Troyer, the city's attorney's office. There's a lot of people that were in an executive advisory board that were brought in to develop policies. That was a long process. There was a lot of back and forth in that process, but it was a very robust process. From that, we had some drafts that we had come up with, and they were not formally approved at that point. We had a transition from executive directors. So this is going into the beginning of 2020. We had a transition of executive director leadership, and then the pandemic. So there has been a lot of back and forth with the policies. The Public Integrity Division has been operating fairly on whether it's directive or their former policies, which were in place when they were an internal affairs bureau within the Denver Sheriff Department. That process has been back and forth, and it's taken way too long, as we all know. The last draft of the policies that I'm aware of that we had seen, that Department of Safety had input on and had gone to you all. I think you had come up with some changes, and then they are now with the city attorney's office. I was disappointed to learn that they're still there at the city attorney's office, and they're still in this this position of where I think last communication regarding this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was that there was an encouragement for the Citizen Oversight Board to engage directly with the city attorney's office on the changes that they were making or that were going on. And just so you all know, I mean, that's something that we had already put in our changes. They had gone to you all, and then ultimately they go through litigation review and those types of reviews from city attorneys. And that's outside my control and my purview. So I definitely do. I think we are at the point where I would like to facilitate a meeting with you, Vice Chair, or a representative. Obviously, I think Daniel should participate. Gregg, Crittenden, and anyone he may designate with the appropriate entity at the city attorney's office to get next steps. I think we need to define next steps, and I think we should define also a timeline for those next steps so that we all are in clear agreement as to where these stand, what are those, and if there are any matters that are still subject to discussion or debate, that we get that done expeditiously. And I'll do anything I can do from my end to expedite that. But last it left our office, I think we were in pretty good agreement on where we were at in policy. I also like the context that you all put in your recommendation, that this is a continuous document, it's a living document. This isn't written in stone. This is a document that you, from your purview of oversight and recommendations on policy matters, that you all should have a big voice in us continually improving those. And I think especially when we have a new monitor, not to say that Gregg can't do this as well, because Gregg has been an active participant in the development of these policies. I believe the new monitor will have their vision and their priorities that I think should also be reflected in these policies. So that is something that you I assure you will always be a continuous dialogue, and we are open to those improvements. So do you want me to stop for questions on that, or do you want me just to keep going?
Yeah, we'll stop for a second if there's any questions from the board. Karen? So
I think the idea of you stating next steps is a good one. And what your anticipated time frame would be for setting that?
So I will get right when I'm done with this meeting. I believe at least Ron from my office, who liaisons with your board, I think I will have her and Daniel coordinate with our city attorney liaison, who is James E. Owen, and we will try to get that scheduled today, or get the scheduling done today for as soon as possible, to get a group of us together to then define next steps. I would then, my guidance to that group would be, let's get this done as soon as we can, obviously with everyone's schedules, but it's not, I'm gonna do my part to make my schedule or anyone's schedule available. I have Mary Delackie, the chief deputy in my office, that is already working on these things and will serve in my absence if I cause any delays there.
Okay.
Maybe Karen, or you or any other board member wants to join that meeting. We'll make sure that invitation is open and that you're aware of it as well, because I know you've had a long investment in some of this. So,
thank you.
Yeah, I should, April, I should probably, since I've done a lot of the revisions in prior policies, I should probably be involved in that.
that's why I opened it up. So
yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, the more the merrier. But yeah, I'll take a look at it. Yeah, Armando, I think Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, but we may. I'm not sure the status of this with the city attorney's office, and I want to echo what Karen said. I appreciate your desire and your facilitation to bring this finally to a closure. But yeah, I think what we want to look at, it might be helpful for us to look at whatever draft the city attorney's office has created after you put it in their court, and make the meeting more productive. And I can work with Daniel on that and see what are the latest drafts. We could comment on that and then have the meeting, and then they will have in front of them any comments or edits that we want to make to their version. So yeah, but anyway, I don't want to belabor this further, but I think that might make things more efficient.
Yeah, Stefan, I really appreciate you suggesting that. I think in our past go-arounds with this, that what you just explained, that process will help. So I will make sure between Elise and Daniel, we get the latest red line version out to everyone to review prior to any meeting.
Yeah, terrific. All right, thank you.
all right, if there's nothing else, we'll let you continue.
All right, the next recommendation is the board recommends the Department of Safety works with constituent departments and the managers of evidence.com to provide the OIM direct access to the vast majority of evidence in that database, while appropriately precluding access to such information that the OIM is prohibited from accessing under state law. And for the benefit of the public and those that aren't really clear on what evidence.com is, evidence.com is the evidentiary version of a cloud. It's a cloud storage environment. It is where the body-worn camera footage of officers and sheriff deputies that are outfitted with body-worn cameras, it is where those the evidence is stored in that cloud and in that secure cloud. That is the system of record. That is the record of these. It's not actual the device. The device stores if I'm an officer, I go out on my patrol, I put on my fully charged body-worn camera. At the end of my shift, at the conclusion of my shift, whatever those recordings that were made throughout my shift, they are put on a dock. That dock then downloads into the cloud, which is evidence.com. Evidence.com is then the repository for those records, and it is also for those evidentiary uses of the records. Evidence for criminal court cases, evidence also for misconduct cases and misconduct complaints and the follow-up for those. So in cases of criminal cases, whether they are being prosecuted by our city attorney's office or our district attorney's office, they have a portal, a secure portal where they will be tagged. So let's say I go out on a call, the GO number, or general offense number for that call is 2022-123. I then tag the recordings that I made from that call to that offense number, and then that portal and that offense number is then transmitted over to the district attorney's office for their discovery purposes and evidentiary purposes. Same thing with city attorney's office, secure portal. So when these discussions began, and Mr. Crittenden, please fill in if I leave out any blanks of really what was the genesis for you requesting the access, was that there were instances in which the monitor did not believe or did not have access to the entire volume of body-worn camera or video from cases, and they wanted to make sure that they were seeing everything that was particularly tagged to an offense, an incident, for that matter. Did I capture that right? That's important, Gregg.
Actually, the genesis, it was before I was an interim monitor, Armando. I think it came from Nick, City Council, as well as the Citizen Oversight Board. So I can't give you, I don't want to say anything accurately because I was not involved in that initially.
Yeah, as I understand it, and maybe those on the board may have a different understanding, please correct me if I am wrong. My understanding is it was basically done out of the transparency for full transparency that you all had access to the records that were maintained in evidence.com. I think a key portion of this is those that the OIM, the information that the OIM is prohibited from accessing under state law. And this is where I think has made this difficult to maintain. So my understanding, and I appreciate my Chief Deputy, Mayor Delacki, really trying to run this down for us, the process, because it has been cumbersome and like too many government processes, too cumbersome. So the portal has been established. So there is a portal, a secure portal, just like the district attorney has and the city attorney has for the independent monitor to access evidence within evidence.com. However, a big missing component of that for the district attorney, like I explained, and city attorney to access evidence, it is uploaded into the system tagged with, you know, the report numbers or the reference numbers for those cases. In the cases of misconduct cases, I don't know how that process is. That's something I'm still trying to learn. I'm still trying to see if it's how that is being done. If that portal is going to be populated, the OIM portal is going to be populated just by specific case numbers, or is it going to be populated with all evidence? And that's really the crux of this. All evidence and records, I don't think, or I think we're prohibited from dropping them in the portal because there are those things, like there's other protected evidence in there, like autopsies, crime scene photos, forensic interviews with children, victim interviews for like sexual assaults, those types of things that may not be related to misconduct cases. That I think that's the problem. We're trying to weigh out how do we get that into the system or into the review by the monitor of those videos. And that's something that needs to be worked out. And that's something that my office and like I said, Mayor Delacki has already, I think, been talking with the monitor and folks from your office and with DPD to try to figure out how are we tagging things to be put into that portal for you all to review. I will say when there is a case, when there is a formal investigation, whether it's in police department or in the sheriff's department, those records do get, the video does get uploaded into the case, into IA Pro. And those, so they should have access. However, I think there is that there needs to be, or there's a request for more oversight to make sure that they are getting everything in those cases. So I think that's one of the reasons for evidence.com and that access. And I think we have to figure out how are we going to achieve that so you get the full disclosure of what's in there, so that you can have that check and balance. And that's something that we are working on. And that's my understanding is it can't just be open portal access to everything in there because of those restricted evidence sections, but we also do appreciate that you all need the transparency to make sure that everything in a case is being uploaded and into those things. So I think that's something that's really technical. It's really in the weeds, and I don't know that weeds part of it, but I will assure you that we will work towards that. And whatever, Gregg, you and anyone in your office, how you all want to be satisfied with that. And if anyone from the Citizen Oversight Board wants to be part of that process, or if you want us to explain once we get to that and what it looks like, we will come in and brief you all. That may be what we do. Hopefully, I know it's a complicated thing, a complicated subject, so I want to make sure though that I captured that all and I answered your questions there.
Stefan?
Yeah, thanks again, Armando. You know, this may be another area where some opining from the city attorney's office might be helpful. I just took a quick look at the statute, and it looked to me that the only thing that could be that were appropriately excluded from being loaded into evidence.com would be evidence related to child abuse and neglect cases. You just mentioned a couple of other areas that I am not familiar with, such as autopsies and crime scene photos. I don't know why crime scene photos wouldn't be able to be looked at. Because that would seem to be kind of core evidence. Nonetheless, I guess the overriding point that for us, I think, and for OIM would be, we understand that if there are certain things under state law that OIM can't get access to, we get that. And again, I thought it was limited to child abuse and neglect cases, which I got to believe would be nominal relating to any misconduct issues. But to at least, so that OIM and ourselves can be assured that the things that we're still relying on whoever is making that determination to say, oh, this is the stuff you can look at and this is the stuff you can't. It would be good, I guess, for somebody to say everything on X case has been loaded except the following, and then have a very general description of what that following thing is, so that we could verify that the things that weren't loaded there were appropriately excluded under state law, if that makes sense. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback there. I don't know. Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense, Stefan, and thank you for that clarification. That helps me a lot in doing that. And I wasn't, I got to admit, I was not familiar with the state law and what is actually prohibited or not from uploading. Those were just examples that were given to me. But I agree with you. I think that that's something that should be put into place. I don't know, and I don't know what the limitations of the system are in allowing that or not allowing that, but I get the general that we need to have that oversight, to have the ensure and the check and balances, that everything that it wasn't cherry picked what was uploaded into the system, pretty much. So that will help me get this resolved, and I will be happy to report that once we have it back of how we came to a resolution on this.
Good. Thank you. I don't know if Gregg has anything or Matt have anything to offer on that too, from their perspective, but yeah, but thank you.
No, you summed that up correctly, Stefan.
I can go to the third recommendation.
Perfect.
Okay, the board recommends that the Department of Safety, let me make sure I'm going in right up. Okay, the board recommends the Department of Safety create an official working group for each public safety department, and those groups should be tasked with identifying each department's specific causes for staff turnover and making recommendations in 2022 for how to increase employee morale, quality of life, and retention. And thank you all for making this recommendation. This coincides with, and this is really one of the things I think I've spoken to you all about as one of our priorities here in the Department of Safety is staffing. Staffing and retention is one of the biggest challenges I see coming into this year and into my term as our Executive Director of Safety, and speaking with each of my public safety directors, whether it's 911, community corrections, the police department, the fire department, and the sheriff department, and our community correction, or in our Office of Community Violence Solutions, we are all having trouble regardless of the role in hiring and retention of staff. And this is just not something that is only happening in Denver. As we all know, it's happening across the country with what folks are calling or terming the Great Resignation. Especially hit hard has been our public safety first responder staff. We saw that at the beginning of the year when we were dealing with the Omicron virus and how it really decimated our ranks of those that were exposed or infected with it. And it already stretched those staffing numbers that were already just really impacted by all these resignations, retention, and then folks not wanting or not applying to be police officers. I will tell you that we have open application processes right now for our police department. We will be having one for the sheriff's department. We are thankfully able to have 27 in our current Denver Sheriff Academy class, and they are in their first week, which was a good number. It was a higher number than we had experienced recently, and we're shooting for 40 in our class coming up this summer. Our police academy class, we received a low number of applications for this academy class coming up. We're trying to fill positions, and it's very hard. As you all know, just through the background and through all that process, we need quite a bit of applications to get people through that process. And that has been tough. So I really appreciate your all suggestions here on how we can do this. So for the sheriff department, Sheriff Diggins already has called this out as his year of retention. He's established an internal working group to examine the causes. We have looked at them. It's been shared with me, some of the exit interview information, and that is stuff that I can have the sheriff brief you on when he comes to one of your future boards. But I will tell you a couple of things that we hear from the sheriff's department is, one, the overtime. Because of the way they're stretched and they have these vacancies, they are forced into mandatory overtime to cover required posts in the jail facility. As you all know and appreciate, that working in a jail is a very difficult environment, and then working in it when you're mandated to work in it in overtime is even more difficult, especially when folks can leave and work in remote job environments or other types of jobs. It's hard to retain folks for that. So that is one of the things. How we try to address that is hire more folks. I mean, the more people we have, the less overtime that we will have to pay. But that's not something easily solved, and it's not something that we have a magic wand for. So the other part is that morale and the issue, and I'll take you back to when the Public Integrity Division was first started. It was started based off of, we had a performance improvement team, like you all are kind of recommending here, of, hey, what's going on with the sheriff's department? We're dealing with, hard to recruit, poor morale. And that was based off of they had this feeling and the sentiment that still exists today that whatever, mistakes they make, or if there's a misconduct allegation by inmates, that they will then be subjected to internal affairs investigations, and that is something that really weighed on them, that anything they do would be so highly scrutinized that they would then be subject to dismissal, termination, firing, or some sort of discipline for that. That was one of the things, and that's when we had looked at, how many folks were on. We looked at the data, how many folks were under investigation. At that time, we did have over half the department that had some sort of formal investigation. So that was one of the reasons we created PID, and PID was the Public Integrity Division was created. Some of those things currently exist. We are working with the independent monitor on trying to really work on how are we able to best deal with this triage of cases. We have, made the big step, like you all know, of putting every complaint into IA Pro from the Sheriff's Department. And that is, I think, helping with the transparency piece, but we're also trying to find that balance of what are the cases that we can have, or the complaints that we can have investigated through the grievance process or by the DSD and not make formal investigations. That's something that is a work in process, and I appreciate the monitor's participation and dialogue and us having an open and candid dialogue on how we can get there. So we are working on that. We're working on those things. So that is something. The DPD has not established a working group yet, but I will be speaking with Chief Pazin about that, especially going into and knowing how difficult it's been to fill this current academy class that we're trying to fill. So that is something that we will take into consideration. We have also been working with just city in general. The city has seen this across other city agencies. And so our Department of Finance and our Office of Human Resources are working hard to do things with, maybe incentivizing through pay, benefits, or other ways of keeping employees and trying to increase morale with that. So these are all good discussion. So I do definitely appreciate this, and I will work to get these involved. My question for you all is, how would you like to be a part of this? in that one performance improvement team I talked about back in 2018, 2019, a mistake was made that you all weren't brought in until later in the process or latter in the process. And if we do get some of these up and running, would you all like participation in that process of from your perspective?
I don't want to speak on behalf of the whole board, and probably we need some time to discuss it, but definitely us being involved at some level, whether it's looking at who's going to be on the working group or looking at outcomes. I know Nikki has been very active and proactive in asking about us just seeing overtime numbers over the last few years, and seeing how we can interpret those and how we can make some recommendations. So maybe we'll pause and kind of circle back on what our involvement might look like, but definitely we would love to kind of make sure this is seen all the way through.
Sure. Well, so as we get these formalized into, we will keep you in that discussion to see how that could look like. So thank you.
Anyone else, just so I don't shut anyone down? Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'll get to your next question. So that was the 3 recommendations that you all had done. And thank you again for your report and those recommendations. And we look forward to working with you all on that. So I am going to the next question, which is currently body cameras record 30 seconds of video prior to activation, but no audio. And just for everyone to say, that's a buffer period that they call. So if I refer to buffer, that's what we're talking about. It has come to the board's attention that with a setting change in evidence.com, they can also record audio during that time. Has the Department of Safety ever considered including audio in the buffer recordings? If so, how did the department come to the decision to not enable it? So it is first I want to note that Chief Hazen will be at your next meeting, and I'm sure he will be able to answer this with more specificity because he's been involved with this and he's really been involved. But we have, and thank you, Elise, for helping me field this question with Chief Thomas at the police department, who is the chief of patrol operations. And Chief Thomas said, yes, that he confirmed that that is correct, that there is an ability in the technology that we utilize to capture both video and audio in that buffering mode. So that buffering mode, again, is that 30 seconds. So let's say I were involved in an incident and it happened so fast that I didn't turn on my camera, but I did get to turn it on. I realized, yes, I turned it on. The investigators and folks that look into it can go back and retrieve those 30 seconds previous to turning on the camera, which is a good help and buffer for those types of incidents. So that was the DPD leadership elected only to capture video in buffering mode due to privacy concerns, both for the officer and for the public. And this was identified by the DPD as the industry standard. The DPD and DSD policies directly, they direct when manual activation of the body worn camera is required, and it's clear. And there are consequences for failure to activate this. As you all know, there's been discipline cases when they have not activated these cameras. So this is something that is trained, and is something that is something. So we hope that when these aren't activated or when we need to rely on a buffer period, those cases are minimal due to our current policy and training in that regard. When the DPD rolled out body worn camera technology, there was a lot of legal research. There was a lot of community input on the design of the camera, technologies, policies that balance bystander and participant privacy and transparency when conducting the law enforcement actions. So this was, and I wasn't really a part of those when this first was rolled out and how that came about. So I'm not really the subject matter expert on this, but they did talk about this, and I'm sure this was a point that was brought up when the policies or those initial policies were under consideration and developed. And I'm sure, as I stated, Chief Hazen or folks from his department can answer these in more detail. The other thing that I do know also is that there is a battery life to these body worn cameras, and when you do activate audio as well as video, there is some deprivation of the battery, and the battery life is already at 8 to 10 hours. And when we have 8 to 10 hour shifts, there is some concern around that. When we talk about it, and I asked, well, when would this be, a privacy concern for the officer or a privacy concern for those types of incidents about the audio type thing? Let's say an officer was, on a break and he just or she just got off a personal phone call with their spouse or partner, and it was a personal phone call, and then something happened immediately, right? Would the audio of that be something that we should be able to capture? There's some concern for privacy. Also, there was, concerns about going into, positions like you're at a restaurant eating and you go into a bathroom, or those types of things were some of those requirements. So I think definitely this is something I don't know. And I really don't know if there's an associated cost with, if there were a concern or if there was a recommendation for us to activate that audio, if that was something important that we developed, or that was a recommendation from you. I do not know if there is a cost associated with that. Would you like us to find that out? If that is something you want to continue to discuss for the chief, or for at least to provide to you? Yes, okay. I'm saying yes, so we will find out what that is. So we have all the information when we are considering this as maybe a potential recommendation from you all, that this is something that we activated. And I do see in the chat that Elise Ron is happy to follow up on that. So thank you, Elise, for doing that, because I think I may forget. So no, thank you. And also apologize for Elise. She said her camera's not working today. So did I cover that question? Because I think I have 2 more questions to cover.
So we, just for clarity, so that buffer period can go back and get video, just not audio right now for the privacy concern. Right.
And due to, I think there is a consideration around how that would impact the battery life as well. So we will get both, we'll get more follow-up on both of those, so that maybe in preparation for Chief Hazen's visit next time with you all, that he could answer those specifically, or maybe we can also have Elise provide those in the interim, so you all are prepared with more information.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did anybody have any other questions? Sorry. Okay, perfect.
Thank you. So the next one is, can you provide a status on granting the board direct access to DPD's instance of IA Pro? Can you provide a timeline for granting the access? And yes, and thank you for the question. So let me give everyone, and particularly those on the public or from the public that are maybe listening in, and for our new board member, Mr. Martinez, for those that may not be fully aware. So I think it was earlier this year or the latter part of last year, and I'm sorry, it's been such a blur, but we, Murphy Robinson, our former executive director, made the commitment to give you all access. That access is granted to the board through Daniel, who is the board administrator and city employee, which allows us to be able to give him that access through his admin rights in the city system. And so we did that. And in fact, I was one of the ones that helped put that into action and get that completed. And Daniel was trained in IA Pro. He was provided the necessary training and all the things. And then he was also given that access to, that is the DSD instance, or the Public Integrity Division instance of IA Pro. So just for everyone's clarity, there's one separate IA Pro for the DSD misconduct investigations, and there's one separate instance of DPDs in IA Pro. And IA Pro is the case management system that we use to capture these cases. It is also the system that the Office of Independent Monitor has access to review cases, to go through, and they also communicate on their recommendations in those cases. And there's back and forth communication. So that is the system of record for internal affairs cases. You all did ask me to follow up on this and to getting the same access granted for DPD, for Denver Police Department's instance. That is in process. I apologize that it has not happened yet. Yesterday, or I believe maybe sometime this week, Chief Deputy Mary Dulacky has been in communication with our DPDs chain of command. There may have been a miscommunication or things of that nature. I apologize. They had not been aware of the request, but that is in process. I asked prior to this meeting, I asked Mary for us to get this expedited and for us to work with DPD to get this done quickly. So I hope to have this up and running. There shouldn't need to be any further training for Daniel. Daniel, you will hopefully then, I would imagine they have technicians that administer the program. So once that all happens and that person and that you get set up with that, please either confirm it with me. I'll try to get that done expeditiously. So that is my update on that one. And then I can get, unless there's any questions there, I'll get to the last question. Not seeing any, I'll get to the last one. What is the current status of the EIU and CRU policies? And this is one, and who's currently holding them, and can you provide a timeline for the implementation? So this is one, I forgot this was the last one, and this is one I touched on earlier when we talked about where the policies stand, where are they at. That is something that, and just to wrap it up again in response to this question, I am going to schedule a meeting between a representative of the board, Stefan, as well, of the Citizen Oversight Board, the Office of Independent Monitor, and me or a designee from my office and the City Attorney's Office to see where we're at. From that meeting, what the goal will be is setting the timeline, see where there's any points of still debate or discussion, and set a timeline for the finalization of those policies and getting them out to you all and to everyone to get formal. And I acknowledge that and definitely appreciate that that we will keep this as a living document, and I encourage the board's involvement and the Office of Independent Monitor's involvement in recommending changes, modifications to the policy as it continues. And also I am looking forward to working with a new monitor when we get the new permanent monitor in place on what other, and I think he or she should have the formal opportunity of reviewing those policies as well and for their input.
Yeah, just Armando, just to clarify, I agree with all of that. Yeah, the only clarification I have is that we all, before that meeting, we want to make sure we have the latest version that the City Attorney's Office, the latest draft that they've prepared of both policies that we can review prior to that meeting to make that meeting more efficient.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for that clarification, Stefan. That's the one part I omitted, and that's the part that is really important. We need to make sure that before that meeting or when that meeting is scheduled in the interim time period, that the latest document, red line document, is circulated with all the participants, so everyone is working off the same sheet of music.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Wanting to be mindful of time, is there any other additional questions from the board? Well, thank you so much, Director Saldate, for coming again and for addressing all of these questions. And again, especially to this commitment to the follow-up meeting. Us as a board will make sure we are on top of this and schedule it as soon as possible so we can get the community accurate timeline of when these policies can be put in place.
Thank you, Dr. Alexander. Thank you all. Have a good weekend, and I will see you all soon. And please feel free to reach out if you need anything.
Thank you. All right, to wrap up this board meeting, we're going to have a presentation of the OIM's 2021 annual report by Gregg Crittenden.
All right. Daniel, were you gonna help run my slides? And I guess I can tell you next slide or something. I don't know how you wanted to do that. Let me see here. I got to get my screen fixed. All right, so as some of you may know, the OIM is required by ordinance to submit a report each year by March 15th. It's our OIM annual report. Slide. The OIM annual report What it does is it provides data, summary information surrounding many of the OIM's key responsibility, which includes reviewing investigations and making recommendations on disciplinary findings associated with misconduct complaints on sworn police and sheriff's officers and deputies, monitoring investigations into officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths, analyzing and making recommendations about potential policy issues, and conducting outreach to the Denver community and its public safety personnel. Slide. Misconduct complaints about officers are handled and investigated by the Denver Police Department's Internal Affairs Bureau. It also has a conduct review office which reviews the investigations and makes recommendations about findings and discipline. In 2021, the DPD recorded 225 community complaints and 126 internal complaints. So compared to 2020, these counts represent a 36% decrease in community complaints and a 7% increase in internal complaints. With that said, it's difficult to explain the fluctuations in the number of complaints reported over time. Counts can change as a result of developments in organizational policy, practice, training, changes in triage practices, and many other external factors. So for this reason, we cannot be certain as to the reason or reasons for the decrease in community complaints in 2021, but we do believe in part that it may be due to the COVID-19 pandemic and a reduction in the stops and arrests by the police department. And we acknowledge that COVID-19 was a factor in 2020 as well, but the difference in the complaints was likely offset by an increase the community complaints related to the police department's response to the George Floyd protest. But regardless, we're going to continue to monitor this trend. Slide. In terms of discipline associated with misconduct complaints for the police department in 2021, one officer was fired, 7 officers resigned or retired pending an investigation or discipline review, and 18 officers were suspended. The OIM provides more detail about cases that received discipline or were terminated or were resigned in our annual report. And the ones we report about in regards to suspensions were cases that received 10 days or more. We reported on those in a little bit more detail in the OIM annual report. The report also mentions the commendations that were handed down in 2021. 328 commendations were awarded to officers whose actions rose above the expected standards of key departmental values last year in 2021. Slide. As to the Sheriff's Department misconduct complaints, they're handled by the Department of Safety's Professional Integrity Division, which is comprised of 2 separate units similar to DPD. They have an investigative unit, that's the Administrative Investigations Unit. They investigate the misconduct complaints. And then they have the Conduct Review Unit, which reviews the investigations and makes recommendations about findings and discipline. In 2021, AIU recorded 88 complaints from community members and inmates and 135 internal complaints. So compared to 2020, these counts represent a 15% decrease in complaints from the community members and inmates and a 5% increase in internal complaints. And again, like DPD, it is difficult to determine what drives the fluctuations in these complaints over time. Slide. In March 2021, the OIM learned that AIU had been employing a triage process, which referred certain misconduct complaints to the Sheriff's Department, rather than opening them into formal cases to be investigated by AIU. The complaints referred to the DSD were not entered into iPro, which is the case management database used to share complaints and evidence with the OIM, but instead they were being recorded on separate spreadsheets. So last year, about the second half of 2021, our office, the OIM, worked closely with AIU and others in the Department of Safety to update this triage process. And now going forward, AIU will be entering all misconduct complaints, even those referred to the Sheriff's Department, into IA Pro. And we're going to continue reviewing and reporting on complaints opened into formal AIU cases. And we're going to also begin to review and report on misconduct complaints that are now referred to the Sheriff's Department. Slide. In terms of discipline for the Sheriff's Department last year, 2 deputies were fired, 6 resigned or retired while a case was pending, and 38 deputies were suspended. The OIM annual report again provides more detail about cases associated with terminations, resignations, and suspensions of 10 days or more in its report. The OIM also reports the commendations. 42 commendations were awarded last year to deputies. Slide. Another responsibility the OIM reports on is our investigations into critical incidents, not our investigations, but on investigations into critical incidents involving police and sheriff's sworn staff, which includes officer-involved shootings and critical incidents. In this slide, it shows the officer-involved shootings in 2021. DPD officers were involved in 7 shootings, and sheriff's deputies were involved in none. The administrative reviews into these incidents were pending during this reporting period, and there's more detailed descriptions of many of these in the OIM's report. Slide. As to the in-custody deaths in 2021, 1 individual died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound during contact with police officers. The administrative review of that incident was pending, and there were 9 in-custody deaths on the Sheriff's Department side. The administrative review into 2 of these were completed in 2021. In both those incidents, the AIU determined that the involved deputies did not violate any policies, and the administrative reviews into the other 7 were pending during the reporting period. That is a quick summation highlight of our report. Did anyone have any questions? And then I've got stuff to discuss in executive session.
Larry?
Yeah, I have a question in regards to disciplinary matters. Are any charges filed tracked? Is that a data point that is tracked if charges are filed for any disciplinary matters?
You mean like criminal cases? Mm-hmm. I mean, we keep track of that. Is Matt still on? Matt, can you speak more on that?
Yeah, we have access to some information about criminal charges, but that data kind of does not live in IA Pro, where we do most of the reporting from. So it hasn't traditionally been in the report unless it's linked to a complaint that we're already summarizing. So for example, as you read the report, discipline summaries of some suspensions and terminations might be linked to criminal charges, and we do summarize those in the report. So we don't report kind of aggregate numbers, but if there were charges associated, if the charges and the actions kind of led to the complaint and the discipline, they are summarized in the report.
Thank you.
Anything, any other questions? Okay, that's all I had.
No, that was super helpful for me too, just to see some of those trends that have been happening. And even Larry's question, I'm sure we might get that from the public at some point. So I'm glad that that will be included. So we'll have that to share in the future.
Excellent.
Any other questions or board business items? If not, I will do a motion to adjourn the meeting and move to executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we will see you all in executive session.